Welcome to the Gruber Morning Show, our EV portion. I'm Pete Gruber,
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning and welcome, everybody.
and it looks like our background may have gone mono.
Yeah, I'm adjusting it. It's
We're
a size
just
thing.
Yeah, at the last second, we had a fairly small image on the background and we were blowing it up, and then I put a larger one in.
And it's no surprise, but today's podcast is going to be centered around the Robo Taxi event. That's what's in the news right now in the EV world, and we've got some updates for you. There we
There you
go.
go.
One of the first things that I was that I noticed about the event, and by the way, I hung in there for about over half an hour, and I thought, well, maybe I'll catch it tomorrow then.
Sure.
But
Pete, real quick, can you get up on your mic a little for me?
sure, most of
Thank
the
you.
people that were there, that were walking around, that were talking about the anticipation of when something's going to happen, and there were a lot of false starts. Someone said, "Oh, it looks like they're going to start." That was like 15 minutes
Yeah.
in or something like that. And there was a lot of speculation. We saw Bearded Tesla. We saw Sandy Munro. We saw, some of the other people in the EV space. And the speculation for that hour or so was, is this robo-taxi going to have a wheel? That was a big issue. And it turns
Sure.
out it doesn't. So there you can see it. Of course, the cyber taxi or cyber cab production was announced to start in 2026 and be priced under $30,000. Operating costs were reported to be 20 cents per mile over time. Be really interested to get some of the basis for those costs.
Yeah, I agree.
What's the bill of materials here? And then Elon also showcased a Robo van and, of course, the Optimus humanoid robots that were plentiful and walking around. Did you get a chance to watch it, by the way?
I actually did not get a chance to watch it live. I've seen a few clips of it since, and I was very impressed, mostly by the announcement of inductive charging.
Mm-hmm.
That to me was probably the biggest tech thing. It was kind of light on details, honestly,
Yeah.
overall.
That was the general consensus from the investment camps and even the attendees. But so much to unpack, though. I mean, it wasn't just the robo taxi. This van, for example, can carry up to 20 people, and very few details. And they didn't give a price on that item, but they were talking about also how quickly they could ramp up production on the robo taxi. And there are some regulatory hurdles that have to be resolved, to leapfrog over the competitors like Alphabet with their Waymo vehicle. They say that the speculation is that establishing robo taxis could take years.
Yeah, I think it probably could. They've got a long ways to go to catch up with the likes of Cruise and Waymo. They've got, their whole technology is going to be different. They're going to be using the cameras where Waymo and Cruise both use LiDAR radar. Obviously, the cameras are a lot less expensive. That's going to lead to the lower price. Again, it was just really light on details. But I do have a few thoughts. So first, I did notice as well that even the producer of the iRobot movie kind of marveled at the similarities between the vehicles in the movie and the vehicles that Tesla put out. The We Robot thing was definitely a real vibe. Now, what if I own my own autonomous car? I live a ways away from work. It's about a 35 to 45-minute commute each way. What would I do with an extra 80 minutes a day? That's kind of compelling. Plus, on top of that, I could let my car go out as its own taxi during the day as well, and it would go out and pick up rides and generate revenue for me during the day. The concept is really a kind of mind-blowing concept.
Mm-hmm. It looks like we have some people chiming in. We've got Obertowski is joining us. Thanks for being there. Hello, Mr. Gruber. Welcome. YouTube, Thomas Curtis. He says, Kia ora from Aotearoa, sexy cars rock.
Yes, and I think it's Aotearoa because Thomas hasn't been with us for a while, but I do remember him from New Zealand.
Hmm.
Um, if someone put a believable painting on a building wall or something like that, do you think a robotaxi would run into the wall?
Why, there's the burning question, isn't it? People tend to walk into those at times. Dogs, even,
Yeah.
are fooled by it. Yeah, that would be. What kind of technology would they be able to utilize that would prevent that? Probably GPS location type, data might tell the car, well, even though that looks like you could drive through it, there's really a wall there. There's a building there.
Yeah, it's and it's not just the idea of a building and a painting, a la Wile E.
Coyote, yeah.
Coyote, and those old time cartoons, but anything that has an optical illusion.
Hmm.
We as humans get fooled frequently by the optical illusions, and they're all over our world, even when we drive. We don't realize how close somebody might be because of possibly of the optical illusion of a corner or of a rise or a descent, either ascending or descending on the road. And those optical illusions are some of the things that I know they're trying to overcome with full self-driving now. Are they even going to use full self-driving in the robotaxi? He didn't say. That was one of the biggest things that was absent from the entire presentation.
Yeah, yeah, good point. He did point out that these autonomous cars could be 10 times safer than humans on the road. And yeah, so that to me is music to my ears. The quality of driving skills on the roads has definitely declined in my lifetime.
Yeah, it sure has.
So they do talk about being able to make money with your car. Just think about how often and how long it sits idle every day. Um, they also, or actually, Elon also pointed out that Tesla should be considered as an AI robotics company rather than a car company.
I'm just waiting for Peter Rawlinson from Lucid to comment about that.
Mm-hmm.
Every time, it seems like every time Elon makes those kind of comments, Peter Rawlinson comes out and says, "Yeah, Elon, you're just distracted. You don't have to be a car company. We'll be the best car company in the world."
Well, if Peter or his staff is watching, that might be a suggestion for him. Um, the event started just over an hour after it was announced, and the people there, of course, hung in there because they made the trip there.
Sure.
But the delay was attributed to a medical emergency that involved one of the attendees. And try as we may to get any information about what that was all about, we're unable to get any additional details. So if any of you in the audience know what this was all about, the viewers may be interested. Instagram, Lawrence Gruber, hi from Boynton Beach, Florida. Thanks for joining us.
Hope you're keeping safe there and that the storms didn't hit you too badly.
Yeah. TikTok. D says, can I ask how much energy a lithium battery loses over time without use and comparative to different generations of batteries? That's a very good question because we are amazed at how long lithium ion cells are able to retain their charge. And the reason we're very familiar with that, we're in the critical power business where everything is still lead acid, absorbent glass mat batteries. And of course, the decline there is fairly rapid, and that's why we have a air-conditioned, environmentally controlled battery storage warehouse. And the batteries regularly are top charged.
Mm-hmm.
They are continuously analyzed because they're going to go into equipment. What we find is that in the lithium ion world, roadsters, all of the sexy vehicles that we work on, these batteries tend to just last and last. We had a Roadster, for example, that had the service plug pulled, so there's no drain on the 1,000-pound battery pack, 6,831 lithium-ion cells. A year later, we fired it up and found that the charge was quite adequate. Very little very, if any, little, degradation. The same is true in the later models, like we had some Model S modules or entire packs, and 3 or 4 years later, we put them in cars, and they work just fine.
Yeah, we had that one car, a 100D.
Hmm.
It had a pack that had been underwater, but the pack was sealed. It was safe, and we had waited 6 years before even pulling the pack. We assumed that since the automobile had been submerged, that the battery was gone,
Right.
and we were wrong. The battery was good and strong, and I was as stunned as anybody, I think.
And the critical thing here is no one anticipated this. Talking to J.B. Strobel years ago, he's got the original ESS pack in his Roadster, the first one they made. And he said at that time it was still going strong. We see that typically in Roadsters that are 16 going on 17 years with original battery packs. No one yet knows when end of life is going to occur. So to answer that question, I know it was lengthy. It's a mystery at this point, and these 2.2 amp hour lithium ion 18650 cells just seem to continue to function,
Yes.
kind of like the ever ready bunny.
Yeah. On Instagram, Lawrence Grubner says a troop loyal painting.
Referring to the image behind us, perhaps.
Yes, I think so.
Niels is with us from Denmark. He says, "Good evening from my Robo taxi skeptic."
Yes, I have to admit, I think I'm more in Niels's camp than not, under the Mr. Robotaxi Skeptic moniker.
And Niels did predict that it may be a bust. I wouldn't go quite that far, but it certainly, in some areas, did not live up to expectations.
Yeah, I'm gonna take kind of a wait and see approach. It's the nice promise of a future technology, but we had a nice promise of future technology in 2018 when Tesla said that they were going to put out version 2 of the Roadster by 2020.
Mm-hmm. And YouTube Overtowski's chiming in again. He says, "Mr. Gruber, someday we will make money repairing those Tesla Optimus robots. What a great time to be alive." And I fully agree. We're in the battery business as well. We actually have a private label arrangement with manufacturers overseas that make batteries. And we began to recognize that we've got a customer interested in robot batteries. So there's a whole new field because you think about
Wow.
it, you have to have a DC plant inside this humanoid robot that's going to
Sure.
provide the energy.
Sure.
We don't quite have solar panels on those yet or a fusion generator built in. So, yeah, we are definitely looking forward to working on robots. One of our interns at Gruber Motor Company is a robotics expert who built one of the battle bots that is winning all kinds of awards.
Yeah, I'd still love to see that one live. I didn't get a chance to. I think you did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
YouTube, Dario Broccolino says, "Have there been any major improvements in battery technology? Nothing since our last few podcasts that I'm aware of, although a lot of interesting things on the horizon, including, of course, the complete elimination of DC storage and batteries. Carrying over 1,000 pounds around with you just doesn't make a lot of sense
Yeah,
until we have a solution."
It seems like most of the largest improvements that we're seeing are still in the lab.
Mhm.
Things like solid state batteries, alternative battery technologies besides lithium ion.
And then Neil says, "How much will trickle charging by solar panel, for example, extend the NMC battery life?" Well, trickle charging definitely extends the life of any battery.
Sure.
It's funny you mentioned that, Niels. Our golf cart runs off of three 12-volt batteries. It's a 36-volt golf cart.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to, remember to charge it, and they often forget, and then, it's not usable the next day. Through some furniture purchases, we ended up with 4 solar panels, I should say. Turns out that they were 37 volts. And this weekend, we mounted one of them on top of our golf cart. We put the load controller in yesterday, and it looks like we're going to have a perpetual golf cart at this point because there's plenty of sun in Phoenix.
How many watts does that panel generate?
It generates 9 amps. which is pretty
Wow.
substantial. Yeah, it's a
That's
lot.
a lot of current.
It's a large surface area. Came from a company that was selling solar panels, so it looks like this was their premium product.
37 volts, 9 amps.
Hmm.
That's a pretty strong charge going into those batteries.
Right. So anyway, the final wrap up here on the Tesla Robotaxi event is so Musk said that in 2019 he was very confident that Tesla would have operational robotaxis by 2020. Do you remember that? All right. Well, we're 4 years beyond that. The new date apparently is 2027, and we'll see how that pans out. Um, They also talk about Tesla is at risk of posting its first ever decline in deliveries this year, as buying incentives have failed to attract enough customers to its aging EV lineup. And this is according to Reuters. Third quarter earnings are not out yet, so we'll have to wait to see if any of this comes true. There are several companies attempting to crack the robo-taxi market, and many have suffered billion-dollar losses, forcing some to shut down. The ones that are still around, of course, Tesla. We've got Alphabet's Waymo with about 700 Jaguar Land Rover cars in its fleet, and it's the only U.S. firm operating unscrewed robo-taxis that collect fares. There's of course Amazon too. Zoox is testing its purpose-built vehicles that resemble toaster ovens on wheels and lack manual controls. Their quote, not mine.
Yes.
GM with their Cruise, which uses the Chevrolet Bolt EV, has indefinitely suspended plans to develop its full self-driving without controls. So Tesla's approach to full self-driving technology does, in its current iteration, require constant driver attention, but keeps costs down. And it has faced legal scrutiny with a couple of fatal accidents involving technology. I just can't imagine, though, that the AI and machines doing the driving are going to have a worse record than humans on the road these days. So they feel that the full autonomous unsupervised FSD will be released in Texas and California next year, and it will be Model 3s and Model Ys.
That's going to be an exciting development when that happens. I think getting FSD up and running is going to be a prerequisite before any of these true self-driving vehicles are going to be allowed out on the roads. Regulators in general are very skeptical. So Tesla's got some big hurdles to overcome, just like Google with Waymo and their Alphabet, or Alphabet with Waymo.
Good point. YouTube, Niels again, he says Aptera claims that their NMC batteries will last much longer than usual because of their solar panels. Interesting.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Because we know from the historical talking and research that we've done, as well as what we've seen in the industry, if you keep a battery between about 50 and 80%, it's going to have a longer life than at any other time in any other batteries that get exercised or worked more rigorously. We also know that trickle charging, lower voltage, lower amperage charges, help to eliminate heat during the charging process. That's why trickle charging is so effective. It puts electricity into the battery without heating it up. Aptera with their solar panels do both. You drive your Aptera car, it goes for it's 30, 40 miles, maybe it gets down to 50%. And then you have it sitting outside during the course of the day. It's going to charge itself up to 90 in a trickle charge type of fashion. You're always going to be in that sweet spot range, or you're going to be much more likely to be in that sweet spot range.
Mm-hmm. Good point. All right. So that's the news on the robo-taxi. And he also mentioned, Elon now, that it will be below $30,000, of course. Quote, I think it will be a glorious future. And he reiterated at that point, adding that he thinks we're headed into an age of abundance. And of course, what he's talking about there is as machines begin to take over functions, manufacturing, delivery, all of that, humans will be out of jobs, granted, but the production machinery is going to continue to run, and it's going to run at a more efficient pace, faster pace, longer pace. Remember, humans only work 8 hours a day, right?
Right.
So, what happens to this windfall now that is generated in the machinery of the economics in virtually any country?
It's going to be an interesting thing to see. At the beginning of the 20th century, we saw the same type of thing. What is a housewife going to do all day? She has a washer to wash her clothes. She has a dishwasher to wash her dishes. She has a toaster to make her bread, and an oven you just turn on immediately, and you can make your meals. You don't have to cut wood anymore. You even have a vacuum cleaner to vacuum your carpet that you don't have to now take outside and beat with a broom handle.
Right.
So what are they going to do with all their time? Well, we found that we're more busy than ever.
And the utopian vision of this is that eventually the currencies will eventually go away. They'll be unnecessary, but in between will be a concept called universal basic income,
Right.
which is where you talk about government programs now. This is programs on steroids. You're going to get paid for not going to work because there's no place to go to work. And this universal basic income is going to level a lot of playing fields.
It's an interesting concept. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. All right. So another news item here. The EV slowdown is a lie. Global sales just reached a new record in September. So they're talking about all electric and plug-in vehicles doing just fine, despite what you might have read elsewhere. The big picture is that EVs are on the rise. Last month, a record-breaking number of all-electric and plug-in hybrid cars were sold globally.
Mhm.
And according to research firm Robo, in September, a whopping 1.7 BEVs and PHEVs were sold around the world, which is an increase of 30.5% year over year, and 150,000 more units compared to the previous record set in December of 2023.
That is a lot of cars being sold. China is leading the charge. Somewhere between 70 and 80% of all EVs being sold are being sold in the Chinese market. And the Chinese market for new cars is over 50% electric now.
Mhm.
Um, I went through the article, and I like to read the comments under the article sometimes because there are some real nuggets. There are that people will speak about that make relevant points. Two of them stood out to me. First, for the people that want to use EVs, but like the security blanket of a gasoline-powered ICE vehicle, PHEV for them is a compelling option. They can take the time to install the EV infrastructure at the house. They get the benefit of having the electric vehicle that can get them between 30 and 50 miles. It gets them to work, it gets them home. All their running around, or most of their running around. But whenever they need to take a long trip in that car, they can have the comfort of knowing that all the existing infrastructure that's been out there for 100 years plus is available to them to use. Personally, I kind of question the logic, but it makes of why you'd want a hybrid in the first place. But for those people that are trying to work their way to the transition, still have a lot of uncertainty, I can see the logic. Um, the second thing that I read that I thought was even more compelling, though, was a person who said the faster we go to EVs, the better. A large percent of our legacy automakers' revenue comes from the Chinese market. Ford, General Motors, Stellantis, Chrysler, China is their second largest sales market. And if China has already gone to 50% EVs, how long before China decides to ban the sale of ICE vehicles? What happens to a company when they lose their second largest market or their second largest customer? There are a lot of companies that just don't survive that.
Right.
And yet, here in the States, we're trying to kind of help nudge and push Ford and General Motors and and our domestic automakers back toward the ICE engines and away from EVs, I think it's short-sighted.
Hmm. There's an interesting article also. Oh, it looks like we've got a number of things to
Oh,
unpack
yes.
here. All right. YouTube, Nate to Gas says the future of electric vehicle charging is not wired. It's definitely wireless. We need miles and miles of wireless EV charging pads buried under the blacktop all along avenues and cities, and so we can accommodate these people and they don't have a reserved parking spot. You know, my vision of the wireless charging that was proposed with these robo taxis would be home charging. It's
Yeah.
fairly easy to insert something like that, and it doesn't even have to go under the concrete or under the blacktop. In a home charging situation, it's just simply a pad that is laid on top of the surface.
You could do the same thing in a parking garage as well.
Hmm.
You know, it would be far less expensive to have parking garages set up and or parking lots set up with wireless charging pads that are either slightly subsurface or even on the surface.
Right.
But yeah, I agree with Native Gas that wireless is the future.
And then he also says there are 100 million Americans who live in cities that don't have reserved parking.
Mm.
Big problem in China, too, and Europe, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah. Parking meters everywhere. Obertowski from YouTube says all brick and mortar retail suffer due to high staff costs. Just one of these robots could help the shop survive.
That is so true.
Yeah.
Think about it. You'd have one robot. Maybe their job is simply to stock.
Hmm.
Take the product off the truck, bring it in, get it stocked where it's supposed to be, help take care of making sure all the shelves are up when the store is closed, that everything is restocked or clothes are folded or whatever, and they would just work. They could just go.
Yeah. And my feud with the Starbucks baristas would end because no longer would I get an incorrect order, which happens
Yeah.
about 50% of the time.
Yes, for sure.
Neil says FSD will likely never work 100% if they got rid of the hard coded rules for driving and thus probably never get approved. Well, Mark's comment earlier, what if we paint a picture of the continuation of a road and it's really a brick building? How would FSD respond to that?
You know, and so I think Niels is, unfortunately, he may be right there that going completely neural network is a great concept, a great idea, but I don't think that's going to get you to 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, another article here. Toyota chairman delivers cruel warning to EV owners. Akio Toyoda is the chairman of Toyota Motors, and he was speaking in a news conference in Tokyo, Japan. Now, Akiya is the son of Shoichiro Toyoda, who has passed. And so, anyway, Akio took over the company, and he warned that a hard transition to a future where EVs are the sole offering will cause devastating harm to the automotive workforce. He finds that much harm will be done, especially to the suppliers that produce such components, and of course, the workers in the factories. In Japan alone, he says there are 5.5 million people involved in the automotive industry, and among those who have been doing engine-related work for a long time. If electric vehicles, he adds, simply become the only choice, including for our suppliers, those people's jobs would be lost. Now, Aikio has long been a skeptic of electric vehicles and has argued on numerous occasions that there are multiple ways to tackle the threat of carbon emissions without sacrificing people's mobility. He argues that EVs and hydrogen power come with a set. They come with a set with infrastructure, pointing out that many of its customers live in parts of the world where there's little or no access to electricity. I found that puzzling. If they don't have electricity in a part of the world, do they have cars? You know, I mean, proportionately.
That's a legitimate question there.
So he says, no matter how much progress BEVs make, I think they will still only have a 30% market share. Then the remaining 70% will be hybrid electric vehicles and fuel cell electric vehicles, or the hydrogen type of vehicles. And so, anyway, there's an interesting viewpoint that you don't normally hear.
And I don't normally agree with either.
What was your abbreviated version of his position?
Well, my abbreviated version of his position is we have 5.5 million people who have been building engines for a long time, so this isn't going to work. No, if that logic was able to hold true, we would all be driving cars with steam engines.
Yeah.
People who buy these cars honestly don't think about or care about who's building them. They care about getting the best product for the lowest price. And sometimes it's the better product that justifies a higher price. Sometimes it's not. But at no point does the person who's buying a car really going to take into consideration, oh, I must buy an ICE vehicle because I have to support all the people who are building engines for ICE vehicles.
Yeah.
That's just not going to be something that occurs to 99% of people who are buying cars. They're simply buying what they believe is the best value for themselves. I honestly think his numbers are opposite.
Mhm.
Somewhere between 70 and 80% of cars are going to end up being electric. And it may be battery electric or fuel cell electric, although I think battery electric is going to be the vast majority of that. 20 to 30% is going to end up being everything else.
Yeah.
And I just think he's just trying to hold on to the past. It's almost the classical argument of this is how we've always done it, so that's how we have to do it in the future.
And let's not forget that this is the company that had a chance to be the first major auto manufacturer in BEVs with the introduction of their hybrid in the last century, the end of the last century. Remember the Toyota Prius?
Yes.
It was a wildly successful, deviation from the normal type ICE, only engine cars.
If you think about it, they were at least 10 years ahead of everybody.
Yeah.
Because the Nissan Leaf, I think, was the next truly electrified vehicle to come on the market. And the Leaf didn't come on the market until 2009. And we have Priuses that have been out since 1997.
Yeah. So one other quick article before we wrap here. And by the way, stay with us at 11 o'clock if you're interested in Tesla Roadsters. We're going to have our Roadster podcast in about 28 minutes, 27 minutes now. But this article, the headline is Porsche Taycan sales tank by 50%. And it goes on and says, things are looking rather grim for Porsche's electric darling, the Taycan. After riding high on the initial wave of EV enthusiasm, sales plummeted by a whopping 50% in 2024. The company has already scaled back production at its Zuffenhausen plant from 2 shifts to just 1. It's a clear sign that the market appetite for this luxury EV isn't what it used to be.
Porsche Taycan is an interesting car. I've seen a few around here in the Phoenix area, but with a starting price at $100,000 and with options prices up to $210,000, performance that's not as good as either a Tesla Model S or especially the Model S Plaid or probably any of the Lucids, and a price that's substantially higher than those, I don't see how Porsche can compete.
Yeah.
They're trying to depend on people to buy the name, and people are not going to just buy the name.
And finally, for those of you with an entrepreneurial bent that want a great business idea, let me show you something that has a lot of merit. And I'm going to pop it up here on the screen for you. During our most recent crisis with hurricanes, this looked like a pretty hokey, crude type a solution. And in fact, it turned out to be fairly successful. This is a Porsche 911 under here. And It's a way to keep the water away from the car, especially the critical components. In an ice engine, you're destroying the engine by the
Oh
time it
yeah.
fills up with water. With a battery electric vehicle, ooh, you've got all kinds of risks. Salt water gets in the battery, creates a fire, your house burns down. And this was offered actually on Reddit. And Supercar Blondie also has been talking about this. But again, my point here is if you're looking for a business opportunity, you get a nice, thick mill, large bag like this, and you market it, and you target those areas where there's a natural disaster about to happen. And I'll bet you'd be sold out in short order.
I think you would be. It's stunningly simple.
Yeah,
And it's one of those things that you think, why didn't I think of that before?
exactly. Yes. So there were some interesting comments on Reddit. One of them was, "It's genius." But I don't see a downside of this as long as it's completely sealed and you are not stupid enough to start the car remotely.
Yeah.
Another one was a lighthearted take. He said, "No, don't do this. The car will die of suffocation." So anyway, we appreciate you joining us as always. In 26 minutes, we're going to start our Tesla Roadster podcast. Feel free to join us if you are interested in roadster tech. I'm
Take
Pete
care.
Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner.